All right. What's up? Another episode of the Stoke podcast. Super stoked to welcome Abigail Snyder. She is an elite XC racer. And yeah, I'm stoked to have you on.
Thanks, man. I'm
Yeah.
stoked to be here.
Yeah. Now that introduction was super weak. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna dive into what is Abigail Snyder. Um, And we'll get into like when did you start riding the bike? And I know that you were a little late to riding the bike, like a lot of people. Same with myself. I kind of was a late bloomer to like starting to ride the bikes. What kind of sparked the interest in that?
Yeah, so I would not have considered myself an athlete in like middle or high school, which is when I feel like a lot of my competitors were already racing. I had a road bike actually at the time, like an old Schwinn Collegiate that my dad had gotten at like a police auction in our family. Like we lived in the country and it was kind of our thing, like pre-middle school probably even that we would go like ride 8 miles into town to get ice cream and then ride home as a family. But that was like the only cycling that I knew. And so I didn't know mountain bikes existed. I didn't know bike racing existed. It just wasn't a part of my world. And so middle high school kind of just stopped riding because that wasn't a thing that we did as a family anymore, and didn't pick it up again until middle of college probably. And at that point I was lifeguarding to make some money as one does in college and um kind of fell in with a group of triathletes, and they were like, hey, you're riding a bike to get to and from work and you clearly can swim, you should try a triathlon. And so I was like, okay. And I did a couple sprint triathlons, really kind of found out that wasn't for me, but did find out that I liked the structure of training for something. And I liked riding a bike. And that kind of led to working part-time at a bike shop, which of course led to racing a criterium because why not? And eventually to racing mountain bikes. But I think by the time I raced my first mountain bike, I was probably 28, I think.
Nice. Yeah, so that's kind of similar for me for my story as well. So like was it the running or the swimming you didn't really enjoy?
The running for sure. Like I didn't
Mm.
mind the swimming,
Yeah.
but I'm just not a runner. I don't enjoy it.
No, and like I'm starting to like right now outside. Like here, let me see if I can even. I don't know if you can see, um,
It
but
looks very white. Is it
it's
snow?
oh yeah, like 3 feet of snow. Like literally, we got a storm for the last 2 days that buried all the way up to the fence. Like we had to shovel the whole car out from under the snow. And so
That's
anyway,
wild. It was 65 here today, I'll have you know.
what? And you're in North Carolina?
I'm in
No,
Virginia.
Virginia.
Yeah, Southwest Virginia.
Cool. I'm not very familiar with the East Coast.
Yeah.
Well, that's sick. Yeah, no, we're getting a monsoon of snow. It's insane. So I have to take on other like means of activity. And so my fiance is an ultra runner. And to like hang out, I can only take her on the bike with me so much. She loves riding the bike, but I also have to go run with her. And I'm actually starting to like running, but at first I was like, screw this. I can do, 50 miles on a bike in like 3 hours. And then running, I could barely do, I could barely even run for 3 hours, let alone an hour. So it's like, I get that. So the bike was more of just like an intriguing form of training for you.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, initially, like I said, my initial exposure was all on the road. Even for racing, it was initially like a few criteriums here and there. And there was even really kind of a big pause between that first criterium and then doing any other racing. So my first career was in teaching. And so right about the time that I did that first criterium, I moved to East Africa, Tanzania, to teach at an international school for 4 years. And so was not racing my bike there. I had a bike to commute on, but definitely was not racing or training or anything like that.
So you were there teaching.
Yeah.
What subject?
I taught English and PE for middle and high school.
Way. So what was like the craziest culture shock for, coming from the States?
I think Oddly, I feel like I didn't experience as much culture shock going to Tanzania as I did coming home to the US 4 years later, even though I had visited occasionally, definitely every summer. Um, Moving there, I think I was more like ready for it. Like I just expected everything to be different. And so like, sure, the culture is different in the sense that it's a lot more polite than we are in the US.
Yeah,
Like I feel like here we tend to be very like, let's do this, very task oriented, like on time for, well, maybe not on time for everything, but at least like driven to get things done. Whereas there, it's very much like you would be considered rude if you went up to someone and be like, hey, I need this. Like you have to ask them first, like, how are they? How are their family? How's the farm? Whatever.
yeah,
Um, and then get to whatever you're actually there to ask them about. So I think that that was like one of the things that was like strikingly different. And then when I moved home, I just felt like everything was very different. Like I kind of felt like I jumped into like warp speed a little bit and was like, okay.
yeah,
um and even some of that was going from like being surrounded by like in an international school full of like 40 different nationalities. So I was surrounded by all these languages, all these cultures, everything all at the same time, to being like everyone around me looks like me and speaks only English.
yeah.
That's weird.
I bet, especially 4 years, like it's different than going somewhere for like a year even. 4 years, you almost that's the amount of time where you establish yourself in a community. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel
And in
like,
an age where you're also like, I mean, I was like mid 20s, so also kind of like figuring out who I am. So I
yeah,
think, I mean, it was definitely a very formative time for me.
crazy. Yeah. And it's almost as if like coming back to the States, I went studied abroad and then I went to Indonesia for it was only like 28 days. But then when I came back, it was like everything's kind of fake, right? Like the grocery store, super weird. It's like
It's enormous for
it's
one. That is
enormous.
still weird to me. I hate going, like, I refuse to go to Walmart, not because I have like anything against Walmart, but because it's so big and it overwhelms me. Like,
It's
I
huge.
prefer to go to the smallest grocery store in town.
Mhm.
That's more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, where you know where your veggies come from. And I'm sure like the markets in Tanzania were local farms or the guy who grew the cheese or made the cheese and you had the
I mean,
greenery.
you just got your fruit on the like your fruit and vegetables was literally like 100 feet from my doorstep on the corner. Some
Yeah.
guy selling fruits and vegetables on the street. Like, sure, that like we went to grocery stores for like I don't know flour or rice or whatever, but a lot of it you could literally buy like around the corner from your house or two doors down.
That's so cool. And what's really special about that is um the connection to the food and to the agriculture. I feel here in the United States, we're so separate from everything. We have a fridge full of food that, man, it could have been in California maybe, or like the produce was grown. We kind of lose that connection or like the meat.
Yeah, or even, I mean, I guess I don't necessarily know where some of that was grown, like so much from like the agriculture itself, but
Mhm.
like even just knowing like, oh yeah, I get my veggies from Mary and John is the guy who runs that little store on the corner. Like, I don't know the cashier at my grocery store. They're different every time. Like it's the
Mhm.
community, I think, as much as anything else, where like, yeah, I know all my neighbors, which I live in a really unique apartment building here in Roanoke where I actually do know all my neighbors, but like I think most of the time in the US, like we don't even know the person living across the street from us,
Yeah,
much less like the person running the grocery store.
totally. Yeah, and that's a good point. It's like I think it's more important to know the community that you're getting your source of nutrition from, because I'm sure they know where it came from. That's, I guess, my point. It's like when you go
Right.
into I'm trying to think of East Coast, like, do you guys have Publix?
Not here.
We don't even have that here, like a Safeway,
Kroger is big.
Kroger. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just trucks of food that are being brought from all over the country, and it's like we just don't know where it's coming from. But that's one thing in Indonesia. You just kind of knew where everything was. Nothing was driven. It was not putting on like a car. Like everything was kind of grown in a local area. Um, And I thought that was super special. And that's the thing that we kind of lack here in the States is the grocery stores are huge,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
I don't need 28 varieties of crackers. Like I just don't.
Crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. Like we got to be blessed and grateful that there's, so many options, but also it's like at what point we're only going to get more and more options and more food and more, um, the produce is going to go grow faster. It's like it's never going to stop. Um, that's really sweet. And so, like, what else in Tanzania did you find really unique and special?
I think the biggest thing was really like that community of people who were from all over the world. Like, um, yeah, to hear, Swahili and French and German and English all being spoken in like the same conversation in the same room. It's just a really unique thing. And like, I think it speaks to like the variety of different perspectives that are being shared and the fact that like we can all share like those same experiences. And I guess a lot of my connections socially there were through sport, all kinds of sports. Like I initially played volleyball, and then like some of the people playing volleyball were like, "Oh, you should come join. We play rugby on Thursday nights." And I was like, "All right, cool. Let's try rugby." And then rugby turned into like, "Oh, we go scuba diving on the weekends, or we whatever." And so like kind of just that like sport as a generator of community, and like just the I don't know, the beauty of that kind of international community that stemmed from that was cool.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And so, what kind of led you to the teaching path? Did you go to school for it, or was it
I
something?
did. Yeah. I went to school for teaching and kind of the teaching internationally at least. I had a roommate in college who grew up at a boarding school in West Africa. And she was like, I think you would really like teaching at an international school. And I was like, okay, cool. I've never heard of that, but that's what I'm doing. And it was literally as simple as that. Like I kind of just made up my mind that that's what I wanted to try after I graduated. So I taught for like a year and a half or so in the US and then got the job in Tanzania. Didn't even know where Tanzania was on a map. I had to Google it, but was like, I'm doing it. Let's go. And yeah, ended up staying for 4 years because I loved it.
That's sweet. And so, fast forward, you come back to the States, and do you have like a job lined up coming back to the States, or contract ended in Tanzania and you were like, okay, time to come back?
Yeah, so I moved back for kind of a combination of reasons. One of which was family reasons. So my dad was moving into like a partial retirement phase, and he had wanted since he was in college to ride his bicycle across the US. And I had told him years and years and years prior that, okay, whenever you do this, I'll do it with you. And so he told me, hey, I'm retiring. I'd like to do this in the upcoming year. No pressure, but if you want. And I was like, all right, I'm in, let's do it. So that was like kind of my primary reason to move home, but also some things politically in Tanzania were changing. So it was very questionable if I'd be able to renew my like work permit and residence visa, whatever, to be able to stay. So things all kind of fell together. But that being said, I didn't have a job when I moved home. I had still kind of been working off and on at that local bike shop because I'd come home for the summer and they'd let me, step in on a seasonal role. So I planned on doing that, but didn't even apply for teaching jobs because the plan was to do this trip across the country on our bikes in like early spring. And I
Hmm.
knew I wouldn't be able to get that time off.
Totally. So you did this trip, which where did you start? And first, let me actually backtrack. Like, what was the planning into that? Because for me, I could be like, okay, I could take a week and plan for a 250-mile gravel loop that could probably and try to get like an FKT, which is super, it's 24 hours, right? But man, I couldn't even imagine like the planning to bike 4,000 miles or something, is that
Something like that. I don't even
crazy?
know.
Yeah, it's a lot of miles.
I don't even know. So I had very little to do with the planning. I was kind of the mindset like I'm here for the ride. Like I'm coming along, y'all decide what we're doing. And so my dad is a very type A planning person. Um, And so he had ordered maps from, I think, like Adventure Cycling Association, maybe something like that. And they had routes. And so he compared those routes with like other routes and had everything like planned out. My brother came along to like drive a truck and then like a camper trailer thing that we had borrowed from some friends. So we didn't do like we're carrying all our gear because I was not in for that. I was like, I don't want to carry anything. Like we're
Yeah,
not putting weight on my bike. That's dumb. That's
totally.
uh, yeah. So, but yeah, so we kind of did the glamping of sorts where we had a RV trailer and camped in that every night. And yeah, it's cool. We started in San Diego, California, and then finished in Jacksonville, Florida. So stayed pretty
Damn.
far south.
Dang. That's literally the most luxurious way you could do it. First, you're having fun on a light bike, and you get to camp in a bed every night.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's rad. And so like, did you just go every single day? You must have taken like a week off, right? To like rest or
We ended up doing it in, if I remember correctly, it was like 40 days total, and 4 of those were rest days.
dang.
So we rode between like 60 and 80 miles each day, something like that. Um, and took it pretty chill. Like my parents, this is the coolest part. My parents rode a tandem across the US, which is so baller.
That's
Like
rad. Yeah.
absolutely rad. But that also meant that their pace and my pace, even though I wasn't cycling competitively at the time, I was not in any kind of cycling shape, but like our pace was just different, especially in any climbing.
Mhm.
So how it generally would work is like we'd all start together, and then every 20 miles, as I'd slowly kind of creep ahead of them, I'd stop, eat a Cliff Bar, hang out, whatever, wait, and then we'd continue on. Um, so 60 to 80 miles might have taken us, depending on the day and the headwinds and the terrain, like anywhere from like 4 hours to 8 hours kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but super relaxed
So yeah, as it should be, because if you're gonna be riding, I mean, for 40 something days with
every
4 miles,
day.
you better ride relaxed, or else you're gonna
Yeah.
be out for the count super quick. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking like my chafe would probably be so bad. 40, 44 days of nonstop. And especially were you not cycling very much at that time too?
So I had done, so I guess I moved home in like June of 2017 is when I
Mhm.
moved back from Tanzania. And that spring or that summer and fall, I did a couple crits, kind of got back into the bike shop life, did a couple crits, did a couple cyclocross races. Was like, okay, this is fun, but I'm also not really about this Midwestern snow and cold mud cyclocross life, which I know that that is real cyclocross, but it's not my thing.
Yeah.
Um, so did some cyclocross, did my first mountain bike race that fall. Um, and then had a surgery that took me off the bike completely for 8 weeks, which left me about 3 weeks to prepare and start riding before we started our cross country trip.
Dang,
So I
that's
had been not really riding at all. Yeah.
that's intense. That's a good way to get back into shape pretty quick, is just ride every day like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could do that every spring as like my base training, it would be maybe the best thing ever. And I don't know, maybe at this point I would need more, but like I came back that year and like did a full season of mountain bike racing, like XC local race kind of thing. And I won every race. And it had nothing to do with skill level, I guarantee it. It had
Yeah.
everything to do with the fact that I had like mountains of base fitness. It was
Like
wild.
4,000 miles of base fitness by the time it's
4,000 miles.
June.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we finished in April. So we finished in
Yeah.
April, which if you live in the Midwest, which is where I was at the time, like it barely stopped snowing for most of the people.
Yeah.
And I had 4,000 miles of legs.
Yeah,
It
and
was
most
great.
people that I'd say 90% of the population doesn't even ride 4,000 miles in a year. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I
crazy.
barely do.
Yeah, I barely do too. That's what I'm saying. Like you did it in like 40 days. It's crazy.
It's so wild.
Um, and so that kind of sparked your interest for like, okay, like I'm back on the mountain bike. I'm winning.
Right. I
I
mean, it's
can,
hard not to love it when you're winning.
yeah. well, then you're like, then you're like, your ego's like, hey, I might be doing pretty good at this
I
sport.
might be okay at this sport.
Yeah.
Even though looking back, I was like, I had zero off-road skills, like zero. It's
Really.
amazing I didn't like crash and die.
See, and that's what a lot of like road bikers, gravel bikers, they come in with this amazing base fitness and they're like, whoa, I can't race for shit on a mountain bike because it's technical, it's rocky, it's punchy. I'm throwing 1200 watts on some little pitches of climbs and 2 hours into a ride because you have to put in that much watt to like get up the
Yeah.
hill. And so
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a different sport if you haven't done it before. And so the learning curve is immense.
Hmm.
So yeah, you were coming in with like, you know, subpar off-road skills, I would say. You could handle your bike if you're winning mountain bike races.
I mean, I was getting off to go over like logs and just getting
Oh,
back on, like
really?
cyclocross style.
Oh yeah. Okay. And then so you learned pretty quickly though. I mean, it took
Yeah,
you
I
a year or
also,
so.
I mean, I was in the Midwest, so nothing super technical to start with. So
Yeah,
that probably helped me out. And I definitely like I did it a lot. So I do think you just learn by doing. But I did a skills clinic. I'm trying to think if it was that year or the next year. I think it might have been in 2019. And I like can still point to that one weekend skills clinic as being like night and day difference in my riding.
really.
Like for one, like I was of the mindset, this is super old school of me, but like when I bought a mountain bike and it came with a dropper post, I took it off and put a rigid post in it. Which is wild to me to think of now. But like, I don't need a dropper post. This is heavy. Why would I use this? And then I
Yeah.
did the skills clinic and was like, oh, now I get it. Like, I just remember like being taught how to move my bike separate from my body. And that was like mind blowing.
Yes.
So, yes, I progressed okay, but like, I cannot recommend a skills clinic enough. Like, that was like night and day difference.
That's huge. And that's something for me, I kind of came with a background of BMX racing, dirt jumping.
Mm-hmm.
So fitness was I fucking hated riding my bike that was longer than 5 miles. I'm
Right.
really punchy. I could do a BMX course, and I'll ride my bike to the top of the pitch so I can hit the 5 set of dirt jumps. Like that was my riding. But separating from the bike body move, like disengagement and the movement of the bike. And then I got older, picked up fitness, and like mountain biking and mental health. And then I was like, wait, this is dirt jumping, literally on just never ending single track. I'm in love with this sport.
I'm in.
Never really had to do like the skills clinic, right? Because I just had the
You
back.
had that background, yeah.
Yeah. And so when I got on a mountain bike, it was just like, oh, full suspension, dropper post, done. Oh, sweet. I don't care if it's not 160 mil. You throw me on a 90 mil front fork and I'll be like, I'll jib around. So
Yeah.
um
I am
skills,
envious of people with your background. Let's just say that. Like,
yeah.
I
Well,
wish
growing up
I had
in
that.
Colorado, we didn't have a mall. We didn't have a theater, we didn't have uh the hangout. Like what all the kids had is like we had bikes, dirt jumps, big mountains, and then when it snowed, we had skis. Like so
Yeah.
like, we just didn't have like we didn't have the mall. We didn't have like the place to go hang out. Like all of our
Right.
buddies, we just told our parents like, "Can we please buy a dirt jumper?" And then we all got dirt jumpers, and then we like built big jumps and hurt ourselves. Like that's kind of like our summers.
I mean, I
Um,
still love when I visit Colorado and there's like all these dirt jump parks everywhere because that's not a thing out here. Like, it's just not. Like, we are begging the city to like have like dirt jumps and like that be okay on public land. Like, it's a
totally.
very different mindset.
It's completely different. And so like, but once you kind of learn that skill, like it's almost like there's that gap of like you got to wreck when you like, separate from the bike and you land and you wreck and you're like, I know that was it. I'll never wreck again. Like the the bike now is free. So like once you kind of learn that, was racing mountain bikes just a huge hit in your book? Like that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think, well, honestly, like once I started racing mountain bikes, like I've done like 3 cross races and maybe a crit since. Like it was very much like this is it. Like those other disciplines, like that was fun, but that's not really my thing. Like this is my thing. Um, yeah, so started working with a coach and started focusing on like, all right, like yeah, I did really great this year because I had that 4,000 miles of base fitness, but like how do I keep this? Like what does
Mhm.
it look like to train for a race? What, like what is an FTP? What are intervals? Like
Yeah.
all of that was brand new to me as a like kind of like as a non-athlete, really.
Mhm.
Um, and really just loved the process of it. Yeah.
And uh, I think a lot of people get on the bike because it's fun. And then there's this whole other world to the bike, like FTP. The first time I ever heard of that, I was like, I'm getting on my trainer because it was wintertime and I'm fucking getting my FTP. I gotta figure it out. Like I never knew what it was. It's like,
Right.
then once you figure it out, you're like, sweet, I know my measure. I know how to train. Like all my zones are off that FTP. Um, my fiance, she's getting on the bike, and she, I, I'm letting her get on the Wahoo trainer, and I gave her a little Wahoo to like track watts because she's never tracked watts. She was a runner, and I was like, yeah, what were you holding? And she's like, I was doing 220 watts for 5 minutes. I'm like, damn, babe, that's great, And so she's
Yeah.
starting to get it. Like she's getting that side of the bug. It's such a bug. It's like this whole other world of like, great, I'm having fun, but how can I like not suffer like I did in that last race? Because it
Yeah.
is about just
But
like,
I think too that like quote where like it never gets easier, you
yeah,
only get faster, or whatever that is, like it's so true. Cause I feel like now, like, so that was like 2018, right? Like when I started, like, okay, like what is training? How do we get into this? And like now, like we're like 5 years later, 6 years later, like I almost feel like I've kind of like done this like arc where it was fun, deep dive into training. And now like part of it I've shifted coaches, which is we can talk about, which is a really interesting and cool like transition for me. But also like I ride now again because it's fun and I don't pay as much attention as I used to like what's my power. Half the time I ride a bike with no power meter and I don't actually care. Um, but I'm still seeking like the gains and the speed and all of those things, but still more focused on fun than I was in maybe 2018, 2019, that kind of thing, like the
yeah,
beginning of
five
that.
years ago, and the spectrum is continuously changing, which is so
Yeah, so much involvement.
yeah, yeah. So once you think you mastered something and oh, my numbers are great, this and this and this, but you don't like being on your bike anymore. So how do we change that to like actually enjoying the bike again? And I'm in the same boat. It's like um I never really I started racing without a coach. I got a coach, love him to death, and I mean everything was great, but I just have a baby, and so it's like I was so good at being on my own schedule, as you know, with the podcast. Like, hey, we're gonna go to 4, and you're like, no, it's no, it's 6:30. I'm like, oh shit, all right, yeah, you're right. So I'm just like, that's how I roll. It's like when I'm like ready to go, I just go. And so if I have an hour, I have an hour. If I have three, I have three. So I couldn't really plan it in. And I had a power meter, but now I just like no power meter on my mountain bike, no power meter on my gravel bike. I will eventually on my gravel bike just because it's a good training sometimes to like train power. But I'm not in I race pro. I'm still seeking to do really good. But the way I ride is like based on feel now, right? As a dad, I'm like a little older. I don't really care. I run, I do CrossFit. And when I ride hard. It's just how I love to ride. And so I don't want my training plan to say ride at a 125 beats per minute heart rate. That's never gonna happen. Like I'm like always. And so
Full
uh
throttle.
full throttle. And so when a coach says don't do that, I'm like, no, who's paying who? I'm just kidding. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just like, no, I'm
Yeah.
like gonna go hard. And that's just kind of how I love my life to be is like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm gonna work out or if I'm gonna go on a ride, it's like I'm gonna almost break a collarbone. Almost. I'm like I want to like ride that edge. And I think that's why I was successful, and a lot of people aren't that way. But
Mhm.
um, so it's interesting. So like what did your new coach kind of change in that for you?
Yeah. So kind of like you, like when I got a coach, like I worked with him for 3 years and I feel like he brought me a long way, but it was a very structured system. It was very much the like 5 minutes on at this power and 1 minute off and whatever, these different intervals, which were very power based, which as you probably know, once you're on a mountain bike trail, that kind of just goes out the window. Like the terrain dictates what you're doing. And so it meant that I was doing a lot of training on the road. And like I live in Southwest Virginia. It's the Blue Ridge
Mhm.
Mountains. They're like generally short-ish climbs. So it was like if I want to do this, I either have to do the same climb over and over and over or like the same loop. And it was like I still enjoyed it because I loved the process and I loved like focusing in on the training, but I wasn't on single track as much as I needed to be to really like keep progressing my skills and speed on single track. And
Mhm.
so I kind of got to a point where I felt like I was kind of plateauing anyway. And I was like, I just need something to shift. And so ended up switching to a different coach who works almost entirely off of heart rate, which allowed me to go do these same like interval workouts, but to use the terrain that I have at my fingertips. And so I can ride out my door and be on mountain bike trails in like a mile and a half. And
Yeah.
like I can go like most of my workouts will say like target tempo heart rate or target threshold heart rate on the climbs and then have fun on the descent. And so it was like using that terrain to train. It's a little less precise, sure, but it's so much more fun. Um, and I've also felt like I don't know, like maybe my power isn't as high as it once was, but I'm definitely faster on single track, which when you're racing mountain bikes is what matters. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
because
I'm
your overall, yeah, I'm sure your overall watts, like when you're on that small 3-minute climb, yeah, your FTP might not be where it used to be, but
right.
for that 5 minutes, you could hit such a higher wattage because you've been training the terrain. And that's what I
Well, and
find.
just my efficiency on the terrain too. Like, I mean, from like a technical skill, being able to like maintain speed through a technical mountain bike trail,
Yeah,
like that comes only by riding technical mountain bike trails over and over and
right.
over again.
You could be as
So
fast as hell on the uphills and beat me by 2 minutes, but I bet to shit you better be fast descending because I will catch you, you know? So mountain biking, it's not necessarily like the Lance Armstrong of road biking. I will never catch you. But when it comes to that double black diamond downhill descent that mountain bike races have,
you
I'm
better watch out because I'm coming.
I'm coming, you know, I'm a bigger
I'm a
guy.
Yeah, I'm almost 6 foot tall and female. So like
Oh,
most of the people I'm racing are like 6 inches shorter than me or
yeah,
more. They're like
yeah,
tiny. I will never ever beat them on a climb. It
yeah.
it will not happen. It's not. It is
No,
not physically possible. But what you just said, like that's been like my motto. Like I may not win on the climb, but I am coming on the descent. And like
yeah,
that's part of why last season, I guess I started like dabbling in enduro, partially because I
yeah.
had some friends that did it and it sounded super fun, and it
Sick.
is. But also it was because like, okay, I'm turning 35, like I'm gonna age out of XC and XCM eventually, or just slow down. Like I'm
Yeah,
not getting faster on the climbs at this point,
yeah,
but I can sure get faster on the downhills and
totally.
have fun doing it.
Yeah. It's so funny you bring that up. There was this enduro race and I've never raced enduro, right? I've always ripped descents. You know, I've gotten like on Strava, I can take a top 10 on a descent on an XC blur, you know, like
Yeah, yeah.
what 120 millimeter max, you know. And so I was like, I'm gonna sign up for a enduro race. And my fiance was like, yeah. I was like, I think I'm gonna try to race in the elite like so I showed up in jorts, uh like a flamboyant like collared shirt and my
Hell yes.
my arrow helmet and took third place overall. And all these guys had like full face helmets with like elbow pads and like knee pads. And I was so blown away. I will say, I do not like, I'm not bragging about this at all, but it was where we used to live. So I saw a bunch of buddies. So I was super, super duper hungover too. So I woke up that morning and I was like, "Ugh." I was like, oh shit, I got an enduro race to do. And like got in the car, like we went up and I was so out of it. I mean, my head, I'm old now, you know, I'm like my head hurt. I was like, I'm achy. I was like, thank God I don't have to like race my bike uphill or else I'll throw up.
Right.
You can
You can
sure
just
tell.
ride with your friends uphill. It's so much
Yes.
fun.
So I just descended. It was so much fun. Oh my God. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'll be getting into more enduro races.
And I think for those of us with like XC or gravel fitness, like it's even more fun because like it's really not a challenge for us to ride up. Like we're
No,
really just kind of chilling. So like
no,
the effort involved there that there maybe is for someone who mostly just shuttles to the top.
yeah. And like
So
that's the thing too, is like I was already at like the first stage way before anyone because I didn't really know anyone there. So I just rode my bike like casually to the first stage and then casually to this. So when I finally got done, it was like 3 hours until like they did awards. So I was like, oh
yeah,
my God, like I guess we shouldn't ride that fast up the hill. Because I was also like,
I'm learning that. I'm learning that.
you are, yeah, which it'll take some time because I was like pinning it up these like gravel roads, like because I'm hungover. I'm like, you are gonna suffer, you motherfucker, you know, like super hungover. You deserve this. Uh, and so I mean, that's just how we are though. Like with sight, like if you race mountain bikes in the endurance realm, you kind of have those demons, you know, where you're like, yeah, you had 3 beers last night. Well, fuck off, you know, you're gonna kick yourself in the butt, you know. But so yeah, enduro racing is gonna be huge for like helping with the descents. Um, so you started enduro racing, and then sorry, we got off track again.
It's all good.
Um, so enduro racing, and then
Yeah, so like this season I'm splitting between like basically XC marathon, which has been my primary focus for a couple years, the longer distance marathon, XC and then enduro, like pretty much doing almost half and half with my season.
nice.
This will be kind of interesting. It's the enduro end of it like definitely pushes me as much mentally as anything else. Like the fear of going off, especially like big bike park features, because I don't really have a bike park around me. I don't ride like our trails are like backcountry. Like I can go off like rock features and like janky East Coast stuff, routes, whatever, all day long. But like a big wooden feature, that thing's scary, man. Like it's so scary. It's like I have the skills to do this, but I don't have the confidence always to send it.
It scares the shit out of me. So you're not alone. From someone who only rides mountain features, yeah, no. Fucking 20-foot drop off a wooden plank that you have to catch 18 miles an hour to even gap it. Nope. I gotta go home.
Yeah, no,
You know, like, fuck that.
right.
Yeah.
I'm too old for this. I don't want to crash and not be able to race next weekend.
Oh, like next weekend, like I don't want to be, that's like a month out, you know. If you crash on something like that, like that's no
Yeah.
like I'm out next weekend. That's like fuck,
Yeah.
be out for like a
The
month.
whole season. It could be the whole
Yeah.
season.
Oh, 100%, you know? Because those are big features. And
Yeah.
you
And
gotta
fortunately,
do
I don't have to do any 20-foot gaps, but like, I mean, even a road gap, that's big enough to scare me. Like, I've never had to do anything like
and you're
XC
hauling ass.
races don't have that.
No, no. And you're hauling ass too, you know. It's not like you're hitting these gaps and you like it's precise like dirt jumping where like you're at the top, you breathe, you know, okay, I've already done a few laps. I've got this figured out. No, it's like you're fucking pinning it, elbows out, and you're just gonna send it, and hopefully you didn't catch too much speed going into the jump.
Right. Trail speed is such a vague thing.
Yeah.
Like, what is trail speed?
How fast you going to that kicker? I was going about like wind speed. Cool. Oh, I'll hit it at
Cool,
wind
man.
speed. You know, like what? Absolutely not. No, I'm gonna fucking hit this thing so fast and overshoot, and then yeah, no,
Or too slow and
or too
like
slow. Yeah,
hook to flat, never
there's a
fun.
perfect. There's only a perfect speed. You know, like with something like that, it's like there's too fast and too slow, and then there's perfect, and you'll hit it right on. Perfect is I mean, I'm a rock. I'm gonna hit that thing fast. Like, I don't know. Oh my God.
Uh, so
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's very much a learning curve.
yeah.
And definitely like as psychologically stressful as it is like I can go climb all these like feet of elevation, like
Mhm.
XC training, and it's like physically stressful, but like it's mentally easy because I've done it so much. But going and like sessioning at like a downhill park is so much more like mentally stressful, even if physically it's not
Yeah.
as demanding.
I'd say it's more of like this just you're fucking scared. Like you're just
Yeah,
fucking scared, you know?
100%.
Yeah. And if you don't train that, like you have to train that part of the brain to be like, hey, we've done this a bunch. We kind of get the speeds. I know how to land correctly. Like for skiing,
Right.
it took me years until I could like huck something big or like do a backflip off something, right? Like it just when I first did it, I was so scared. But now, you know, you kind of get this gradual like comfort, but
Yeah.
it's just scary. The consequence, like the risk to reward is the risk is so much higher than the reward on these fast enduro downhill courses. Like your risk is super high because you're at, you know, 180 beats per minute going downhill. That's fucking
Yeah.
crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's
I,
adrenaline.
I've been practicing just on my local trails, like sprinting into descents. And
Oh,
even that is like, this is a trail I know. This is a descent I'm super comfortable on. But when you sprint into it, it's such a different feeling. It's
yeah.
so wild.
You're taking corners like trees are going by you and like,
And
man,
you can't breathe. Your heart rate's like higher than
yeah.
it was on the
Through the
climb.
roof. Yeah. And I never thought enduro racing was going to be such a lactic threshold workout. Like I was almost cramping and I wasn't even and I train a lot, you know, and I was almost cramping on these like middle grade, not even a mile sprint. Like, you know, you like
Yeah.
downhill and you have like this middle grade sprint. And I mean, I'm like on an XC bike throwing as many watts as I can into the pedals back into the rock garden. Like
Yeah.
it's like you're not braking. It's like a part of your brain switches off where you're just like, all right, whatever happens, happens. Go for it. You know, you
Send it.
send it, no breaks. Like you just, yeah, we've done this before.
I told my coach coming into the season, I was like, I need to like actually train to sprint again because racing XC marathon, like
yeah,
I never I never practiced sprints. Like the likelihood of me sprinting in a finish is almost zero. So like it
yeah,
wasn't something we spent time on, but like I started doing these enduro races. I was like, I can't sprint. Like I need
yeah.
to sprint.
I can hold a good amount of watts for 4 hours straight. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like these enduro sprints,
From 30 seconds.
yeah,
Like
they're a whole
what?
other level. Yeah, they're 30 seconds. And it's like a full out sprint because you know the segment's not long. So you're going all out, like all out.
100% all out.
Yeah, you never
On
do
a
that.
bigger bike than until October I had ever ridden in my entire life.
Yeah, huge bike. I'm sure. What are you on like 140 or
One,
160?
oh no, I'm on a Rocky Mountain or altitude, so it's a 170, 160 bike.
Oh, it's like a
It's a
dirt
full
bike.
on no, well, it's a full on enduro rig, man.
Damn, that's sick. I'm sure
Yeah,
the send mode on that thing is insane.
it's so fun, and like I've definitely like rolled things that I should not have rolled and been okay. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of amazing.
dang, that is sick.
Um,
Yeah, I've been doing it on a 120, 115.
yeah,
You know, but I'm in that time of like I just have one mountain bike, and if I'm gonna
mhm.
sign up for an enduro, I better
Send
I better send it harder than the 170 millimeter guys are, you know?
You have
Uh,
the advantage in any pedal stage.
oh, totally. I've got a 24-pound bike that I'm just gonna rip, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's why I did so good was it was a little bit of a lengthier pettier stage. So I think that's why it was more of an XC enduro race. So I was just like, had the bike, had the training for it. So,
Yeah.
but those big rock drops and stuff like that, I'd want a 170. Man, that would be so sick. Sure, it's just like butter going over everything.
It's kind of awesome.
That's sick. So, what's your plans for this year? So it's February coming into the
Yeah.
season. You're splitting it, but do you have any like big races that you're planning on doing?
So I found out 2 years ago that the 2024 Marathon World Championship would be at Snowshoe in West Virginia, which is like 2.5 hours from me. And when I found that out, like 2.5 years ago, I said, I want to do everything I can do to qualify for that race. So that's kind of been my target for the last 2.5 years, is to be able to race in September at Snowshoe at Marathon Worlds. Last summer, I very unexpectedly got the chance to race Marathon World in Scotland. So that was awesome. But it's a very like, how do I say this nicely? It's a little bit of a convoluted process to qualify for Marathon Worlds.
Yeah,
Um, so there's only this year for 2024, there's only 3 World Cups for marathon. Only 2 of them are before the World Championship. And despite the fact that one of the World Cups last year was after World Championships, they're not counting that one as a qualification. Um, which is kind of what I was hoping on because I placed high enough to qualify at that race.
yeah,
But that apparently means nothing. And so unless I were able to fly to Europe and place top 20 in one of those 2 World Cups this spring, then it's left up to USA Cycling's discretionary process, which is also a bit vague, to get into Worlds. So that's my target race, but it's also, I probably won't know. The race is in late September. I probably won't know until August sometime if I actually will get to race it.
dang.
But that's still the target. So to kind of get there, doing a few like local-ish marathon races, hoping to race Pan Am's marathon, which will be in Brazil this year. And
Damn.
then yeah, and then doing some local UCI cross country races to get UCI points.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that makes sense. Which is going to be a complete shock from training in the
yeah,
marathon and then doing like a really intense 20 miles basically sprint. I mean,
yeah,
I always
yeah.
hate coming from doing I race, I'm in the same boat. I race marathon, longer 100 plus. That's kind of just like the gritty stuff is like where I thrive. And so
Hmm.
racing, I raced for a UCI points last season with an XC race. Felt like I was gonna throw up my heart, you
Yeah,
know? It's
it's
like my heart's
terrible.
gonna come out my throat.
It's so different and it feels so hard.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not, this sounds terrible, but I'm not really excited to race those 2 cross country races. Like I'm doing them literally just for the UCI points. Um, and hopefully place high enough to get UCI points because I'm not really training for them either. Like I'm
Yeah.
still like my training is really endurance focused. Like even with the enduro, like it's endurance focused. Like, and I
Yeah.
know that those 2 races aren't like I've gotten the privilege to race like the UCI cross country races at Snowshoe, the World Cups, like the last 2 years, which those races are super technical. So like those enduro skills do benefit me.
Mhm.
Um, but like the more local level UCI races, they're just not like they don't have like the gnarly rock gardens or the crazy features on them that you see at like those World Cup events.
Which cater to mountain bikers, you know? Like the
Yeah,
UCI races that are technical and gritty, you have a better chance if you are a really good mountain biker. And the kind of the easy, not I wouldn't say easy, but the technical, in a technical sense, the easier the course caters to like those really fit motherfuckers, you know, like the guys who can like, put up like 500 watts. Like I'll
yeah,
never be able to catch you, but man, we hit
nope,
those rock climbs or those rock descents, like that's where like mountain bikers have a chance, I guess, you know.
yeah.
Um, but sweet. And so you're gonna go to 2 XC races to qualify for the snowshoe marathon. Is that to qualify or just to get UCI points?
Just to get UCI points because I don't have the ability this year to get to Europe for those World Cups.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to just get some UCI points here and then hope I get in from like the discretionary process.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, outside of like those 2 UCI races, and then like I said, the Pan Am marathon race, I'm hoping to get into as well. And again, that's a discretionary process where USA Cycling says, you want to go, you can go, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Uh, so, um, Yeah, and then outside of that, like I'm kind of just having fun with my season. So the plan is to do Pisgah stage race. I'm doing BC bike race, which are both more like each day is more like an XC effort a little bit.
Yeah,
Like they're generally like 3-ish hour stages. Sometimes a little less. But like 5 days of racing on super rad trails and super cool places. And then the West Virginia Enduro series is kind of my like enduro focus throughout the season.
nice.
Then I'll finish up with there's a 5-day blind stage race called Trans New England. That's enduro, and that's gonna like that'll be after Worlds, assuming I race Worlds. And that'll like that's really as far as I've planned my season out. That's like late September, and I was like, I'm gonna go race enduro bikes in Vermont and New Hampshire for 5 days and hang out with my friends. And if I decide to race bikes after that into the fall, great. If not, then I'm just gonna have fun riding my mountain bikes. It's
Good.
kind of where I'm at.
That's great. And that's a good mindset to come in. That's the longevity of the sport. Like, I made myself not bike this winter because like last winter and the year before, I mean, I was on the trainer where I was doing like stupid, disgusting road rides where it's just like miserable, cold, but I had to get that workout in. And no, I've gotten to backcountry ski with buddies. I've been able to rock climb, doing CrossFit, like just doing so many more things and having fun with my life. So I think when it's like when you're always in race mode, for me, it's like it's more of a like mental game of just not necessarily having fun with it, more of like the addiction of fitness, you know?
Mhm. And I
So
love that part of it, but I feel like the longer I've been racing, and maybe it's maturity, I don't know. Maybe it's just like I've seen more, but like I want to race bikes in cool places, but mostly I want to race bikes because like the people racing bikes are super cool.
yeah.
Um, and so like I feel like those two things, like cool people, cool places, like that's kind of been guiding my race season this year. Like, yeah, I want to race Worlds of Snowshoe because it's snowshoe and it's my home mountain, and like that would be cool AF. But I mostly want to like really be a part of this community of racing mountain bikes and embrace that.
And it's such a cool community, you
Yeah,
know?
it's awesome.
Yeah. If you have a chance, come to Arizona. We
I
have
raced whiskey last year, whiskey 50 in
the,
Prescott.
oh,
Yeah.
I was there too racing it. Did you do the pro?
Hmm.
So you
I
did
think
the
I
fat
ended,
tire.
yeah, I was probably behind you. I crashed pretty badly. That was my first of two accidents last year, where I cut my knee open like to the tendons 6 weeks apart. Um, so, yeah, so I crashed on a random like corner, just slid out in the looseness at whiskey. Um,
During the crit, or was it the XC, like the backcountry?
like the backcountry race.
That's when
Yeah,
you got your
yeah.
knee. Oh my God.
Like sliced it open, ended up like flying home that night with it still sliced open because I was like, I don't want to miss my flight. I'll just clean it up really good and then get it stitched up back in Virginia. Um, and then healed it up, flew to Columbia for Pan Am's, like literally 6 weeks to the day later, slid out on a gravel corner. And I think because it had never like totally healed,
Yeah.
but just like blew open. And
Oh
like,
God.
like there is a reason I now like will not ride mountain bikes without knee pads. Like I can't afford to blow my knee open again. Like
Seriously.
my scar is like 4 inches long. It's gnarly.
Oh,
Like I would rather wear knee pads and sweat and
yeah.
deal with it.
Deal with it rather than busting a knee.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, like both of those times, like it was not a skill thing. It was like literally like a loose rock or just coming too hot into a gravel corner that was like loose over hard and like
Yep. And you just went right over.
nothing you can do.
Oh
Like,
my God. That sucks.
so.
Sucks. Yeah, but I live in Flagstaff. So
Oh, sick.
about two hours north of Prescott.
Yeah, everyone says the riding there's amazing.
We put in like I think 88 miles of new single track last year. And then we got Sedona 30 miles south, which is like world renowned riding. We have
Hmm.
Prescott 2 hours, Air, the Phoenix area, if I were to live in one city, it'd be Phoenix. Because Phoenix
Really?
is like never ending single track. They have a Maricopa Trail, goes 350 miles around Phoenix. And so
What?
if you live anywhere on the outskirts of Phoenix, you access miles of single track. So then
That's
starting in
awesome.
January, we have something called MBAA, like Mountain Biking of Arizona Association, puts on like race series. So you go like January, and then you have two in February, two in March, two in April, two in May, and you just basically race all over Arizona in the wintertime. So by the time the season
That's so cool.
starts, you already have like 8 races under your belt. So it's a pretty cool spot. Like I'm sure Virginia,
Yeah,
65-degree day, you're riding the bike. Same with Arizona. It's like
yeah.
it's snowy here, but I can go down 2 hours south and you know get back on my bike. So
Hmm.
yeah.
I will have to like maybe one of those days I can be one of the pros that spends their winter in Arizona and just
Like the
comes around
Tucson,
and races.
Tucson
Yeah.
area. I know, like the Keegan, Sophia. It's like, come on. They have a house in Utah now, a house. But hey, that's what happens when you only win, which they must be like blood doping. They're insane. And they're together, you know? What's going on with that? Kenzie and I are always talking about it. It's like they're too good.
They also train more than like anybody, I feel like. Like the number of hours on the bike is just wild.
I know. And I hate to speculate just because you're good, someone judges you thinking that you just do drugs. You're good. Cheater.
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 I can't be that good, but I
I
don't
know,
even cheat half that much.
I know, but it's crazy. It's so cool to see like these two dominating fact like people who just don't lose
Yeah.
and break records at Leadville. But no, it's super, super cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got to catch up and chat finally. For all the listeners, we were scheduled to talk on Sunday, but I'm freaking thought it was going to be next Sunday. So we like totally miscommunicated. I'm super pumped that we actually got on a call and got you on the podcast because, yeah, your story's cool. And I'm excited to see where you go this year.
Yeah. I mean, it should be fun. I mean, I know
Yeah,
I'm gonna ride some cool trails, so that part's like that's decided.
that's done. You're going to be
Done.
riding cool trails. And that's the cool thing about racing. It's like we race, but I race bikes for the community. I don't really race bikes to go win. I would love to win. That's my mentality. But it's just cool to be in the atmosphere and like
Yeah.
have a similar experience to like not only like the pros which we race in, but then also like the people who like are doing it for the first time, like the Whiskey 50.
Yeah.
You know, and it took them like 7 hours to do it. Those guys
These
are
are
fun.
these are my favorite events where like the pros and the amateurs, that everybody all get to race like the same course or a very similar course. Like Transylvania Epic Stage Race is the same thing. Like
Mhm.
the pros start at the front, but literally like everybody's racing the same course. You know, you
Yeah.
finish every day, you all have dinner together, you hang out, you talk. It's just so fun.
It's so sweet. And like that's the experience of cycling that's so cool is we're all in we're all in it together doing the same thing and it's just different for everyone. Some people
Yeah.
it takes longer, and those are the people that, as a pro, they're like, "Wow, I can't believe you did it in 3 hours. I can't believe you fucking did it in 7. You are a savage, high
I can't believe you finished in the dark. Like,
dude. Like your
no
finish
way.
thing was way bigger than mine. You know, like you
Yeah.
conquered something that like is way harder than what I could ever imagine doing.
I mean, what you just said, you conquered something.
Yeah,
Like, I
period.
just went out and rode my bike.
Yeah,
I did the same thing that I do every single Sunday. Like, I went
mhm,
out and rode my bike for 4 hours. Like, that's normal.
yep.
This isn't, like, I don't know. I think it's cool.
You did, yeah, you don't do that and you just did it for 7, you know, and you did it and like it's crazy because you know the pain is the same or worse.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
we're
also not that far removed from like doing my first 50-mile mountain bike race and
yeah,
like not having any idea how to fuel for it. Like, who thought that 5 gels for 50 miles was a good idea? Not me. Oh, wait. Like,
yeah. Here,
and so like I'm not that far removed from like that Sufferfest and like feeling that accomplishment of finishing. Hey there.
Say hi. This is my daughter. Say hi. This is Abby. She's a pro bike racer. We're gonna be like her one day,
Or even better,
or even
probably.
better. Yeah, she's got red hair.
Yeah.
See it, but I don't know where she got it from. She just came out with the reddest hair ever. Um, but yeah, Abby, I'm so stoked that we got to like get together. Oh, hold on. It's okay, mom's gonna get you right there. Yeah, I'm so stoked that we got to get together today, and I'm glad I got to hear your story, and yeah, just rad. And I think we could call it a night in an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good. This is super fun. Thank
I know
you.
we're gonna have to do this again and go and I say this to so many of the guests. It's like we can only cover so much in an hour, and there's just so much. I could have another beer and talk to you for another 2 hours, but
We just need to go ride bikes sometime.
yeah, we do.
That's
Um,
the answer.
just come to Arizona.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
seriously. And like let me know when you're here and we'll go ride and we'll get the whole family out. And we have a great community here in Flagstaff. Like it's unbelievable, like the community here. So or Virginia, I just go race in snowshoe.
Yeah, you could. That'd be sick.
I know I'd got to start training. It's just snowy out. But super stoked. And then just stay on. I'll end the recording.
Cool.
Yeah.